Hey, geometry periods 3 and 4, it's Monday. It's time to get up and start working your circles. It's math time. All right. It's Maze here. It's Monday. It's the 20th of April already? Unbelievable. All right, so as you've been going through your chapter 10, working with your circles, you may have realized that you're missing some, or don't remember, some algebra skills. So I'd like to take a minute this morning and refresh your memory on the quadratic formula, and then also I would like to go over completing the square. I picked a couple of simple examples, and we'll go through those. We'll work them out, and hopefully this will jog your memory and you can get back into the quadratic formula and remembering how to complete a square. This will come in handy when you get to your 10.7. We have to find the center of a circle, or when you're trying to find the length of those chords, and those x's just ain't working out. So here we go. Here is the quadratic formula. Okay, so geometry, chapter 10, circles, algebra review. This is the quadratic formula. Remember that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's one of the three things you have to be able to derive to prove that you have or you are an intelligent form of life. That's one of them. So how do you use that thing? All right, well, here's my example. I picked f of x is equal to x squared minus 6x plus 6. It's not going to factor, so I'm just going to jump right to the quadratic formula. We could have completed the square on this one too, but anyway, we're going to use the quadratic formula. All right, so first, identify your coefficients a, b, and c. Remember, a is the coefficient in front of the squared term. In this case, it's a 1. B is the coefficient in front of the single term, x, which in this case is a negative 6. And c is the constant hanging on the end. So, to use the formula, I plug in my values of a, b, and c. So, x is equal to negative 6, plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6. See that? And then I'm going to divide it by 2 times a. So when I do this, negative makes positive, plus negative 6 squared, 36, minus 24, all divided by 2. Or x is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 12. And this is where you have to remember that 12 is really 4 times 3. The square root of 4, that would be 2. And what's left? The square root of 3, all divided by 2. So now I can divide by 2. 3 plus or minus the square root of 3. 2 goes into 6 3 times. The 2's cancel. Now what this means is you get two values of x. The first value is x plus the square root of 3, and the second one is x minus the square root of 3. If that was a parabola and you were graphing it, the line of symmetry would be 3, and the x-axis intercepts would be from 3. You would move to the right the square root of 3, something between 1 and 2, and you would move to the left from 3, the square root of 3, something between 1 and 2. All right, so that's how to use the quadratic formula. So please, dig that out of your tool bag, dust it off, get refamiliar. All right, now the second thing we have to do is called complete the square. So I'm starting out with the x squared plus 6x minus 2, which does not factor. So set it equal to 0, and I'm going to complete the square. Now here's a note of caution. Completing the square only works if a is equal to a 1. If it's not a 1, you must divide till you get a 1. Okay? So the lead coefficient of the square term has to be a 1. Okay? If it's not a 1, this will fail miserably. All right. So I took this, I set it equal to 0. I added 2 to both sides. Add 2 to both sides. Now look at, isn't that cute? B, or the 6. Now, this is how you complete the square. Take half of 6 and square it. Take half of b and square it, and then you will add that to both sides. So here we go. I take half of 6, which is 3. I square 3. I get a 9. I add 9 to both sides. Okay, now what you may have noticed, the reason it's called completing the square is because on the right, you have built a perfect square trinomial. Okay, that factors x plus 3 quantity squared is now equal to 11. Now you can take the square root of both sides. The square root of 11 is plus or minus is equal to x plus 3. You subtract 3 from both sides, and x is equal to negative 3 plus the square root of 11, or x is equal to negative 3 minus the square root of 11. Okay? That's completing the square. Now, this works really good if that middle b is even. If it's not, makes it just a little bit more complicated, but nothing that you geniuses can't handle, because you guys are all masters of the algebraic manipulations. All right, so that's completing the square. That's the quadratic formula. You'll need them both, okay? So dust them off, and I will probably, undoubtedly, build you a worksheet to allow you to practice the quadratic formula and to practice completing the square. All right? Okay. Wasn't that fun? You doggone right it was. All right, so you folks are still cranking on Chapter 10. Thank you very much. I believe that 10.3 is actually due today, and then 10.4, 10.5, 10.6, 10.7, etc., etc. All right, so I would like to do some worksheets out there to get you guys familiarized with the quadratic formula and completing the square. And then somewhere in here, I'm going to chuck a little quiz at you. So that's Monday. That's kind of the plan for the week. Let's keep on it. I'd like to thank all of you for your participation in this endeavor. It looks like we're going to go at least another week, maybe more, probably. So stay with it. Don't get too far behind, because once you get too far behind, wow, life gets tough, all right? And you got nothing better to do anyway. So let's get on it. More to follow. May's out.